A local legend in his own right, Aaron Woes Martin found his calling from a young age. His creativity has taken him all over the world, but Woes found his spark in the halls of Kalihi Kai Elementary School. Always looking for a new creative outlet, you can find Woes painting larger-than-life pandas, DJing, emceeing, or even handcrafting puppets.
What up, y'all? Woes Martin, PBS, Honolulu, Hawaii. I was raised in Kalihi, going crabbing with my pops, going to the beach with my grandpa, who used to spearfish, who used to catch fish and cook it right there on the beach. And, you know, all the sounds, the lowrider trucks with all the, you know, the hip hop music coming out, and I was influenced by all of that. I must have been either in a second or third grade. A friend of mine brought a book to school called Spray Can Art, and I was amazed by it. He said that his brother stole it from the local library. It was a book by James Prigoff and Henry Chiffon. And I was just amazed by it because, you know, it's like my introduction to graffiti. And I borrowed that book and I traced a bunch of stuff in there, you know. And, you know, Futura was in there, Cray One, Lee, Scene, like all these graffiti legends. And that was like my introduction into it. I went to elementary at Kalihi Kai from kindergarten to the 5th grade, and then I moved to Southern California after that. I used to make my own Marvel characters and stuff, and I used to draw in class. And in front of me there was this Cholo kid, you know, and he would watch me draw, and one day he was just like, "Hey Holmes, you should like learn to tag, you know, you should get into tagging." And I was just like, "What's tagging?" You know what I mean? So then he was showing me his hand styles and classic block, like Cholo blockbuster letters and stuff. And he goes, "Here, you can have my old name." And his old name was Timer. So I used to practice writing Timer, but that was like my main introduction to actually writing on walls. It wasn't until like years later, during my junior year, I moved to Vegas, is when I got reintroduced into like graffiti that was more hip-hop based. Moving to Vegas got me into like underground hip-hop, and I started kicking in with a lot of writers and meeting b-boys and dancers and stuff, and it took over my life. You know, that's all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was hip-hop stuff, you know what I mean? I was addicted to hip-hop. So the ending of my junior year, I moved back to Hawaii, and I had collected all this like graffiti knowledge, you know, that I was into. And my brother and I was always into like, we tagged everything, you know what I mean? Like old phone books, we practiced our tags. My mom hated it because we would write over everything in the house. So I mean, I was heavily into graph always, all the way until like probably from I would say 91 till 2000. 97, I got arrested 3 times. So after that, I really stopped. So in 98, I got in a gnarly car accident, a head-on collision, and it pretty much like, I couldn't walk for like a year. I was in a wheelchair. I snapped my humerus bone and my femur, and I have massive nerve damage on my left side of my body. You know, I was actually going to school then. I was going to KCC. I was trying to get my prereqs so I can get into cinematography because I love film and I wanted to get into that. But after the accident, it knocked me out of college, and I was paying for myself. So I went into a deep depression after the accident, basically, and I couldn't go back to school. So then my homie was like, "Why don't you move to Seattle?" So when I went to Seattle, they pushed art no matter what. Like, it could be hippie art, conservative art, and then of course the graffiti part, you know what I mean? It was another spark for me, like, oh man. And you know, I was going through my depression thing, just being surrounded by all these creatives. It just got my creative juices flowing, and I started drawing again. I started sculpting. I'd buy like clay and do ceramics in my room. After 2 years, my mom asked me if I wanted to come back to Hawaii. So I was back home. While I came back, this guy named Hisham, he was throwing an art show. it's just funny because Hisham knew me as a MC from 95 to like 2000. I performed a lot with my old partner, Omega 6. I see the ad, I hit up Hisham. I'm like, yo, my name's Aaron Martin. I want to come bring my art. Would love to be part of your art show. But this whole time, Hisham knew me as Timer. So, you know, he opens the door and he's like, oh, Timer, what the hell? And I was just like, oh, what's up, dude? He's like, where you been? I haven't seen you forever. And I was like, I'm into painting and you know, I like to do this art stuff now. So I showed him my art and he's like, I would love for you to be in this art show. And the show was a success. People loved it. I got a lot of good feedback. And it's the first time I sold art. So I was just like stoked, you know, like, yo, I sold some pieces. And it actually made me stay on the island, which is pretty much the roots of what I do now as a career, which is the term street art. You know, I'm a street artist. You know, I hate that term, but I mean, it's my life. You know what I mean? And it was the early stages of that, and so I stayed. After that show, they used to have these slam poetry events at Studio One downtown. I started doing live paintings there, and just this one time, I decided to paint a grizzly bear. If I get there and I sketch like a grizzly bear, I didn't have the right colors, and then I had 2 big cans, which was black and white. So I decided to turn the grizzly bear into a panda bear. And it was angry, it was snarling, you know what I mean? So people were tripping out because pandas don't growl, you know what I mean? They have no facial expression. This dude was like, hey, what are you gonna do with that? And he's like, let me buy that from you. You know, and for me it was big because I'm doing live art here and it's the first time someone offered to buy my piece. From then on, like, there was always someone that came up to me like, hey, did you paint that weird angry panda? So I started slanging them, like painting them and slanging them out the back of my trunk. And I painted one of my first like big canvases and I gave it to Todd and all the homies at Information as a gift to their store. And then my stuff just started picking up. So I started networking on social media. When I started making my name through MySpace, I started getting shows in LA, San Francisco, and it just, like a snowball, you know what I mean? I started getting invited to a lot of shows. Like, I didn't think the career would have picked up like that. I just did it for fun. It was like a domino effect from the car accident till now, you know what I mean? The accident was a blessing, even though it was like the hardest thing I ever went through. Shout out to Hawaii, you know what I mean? My home, my love. One love, y'all.
Mahalo for joining us. It is because of the generosity of viewers like you that we are able to share these stories. If you would like to support our mission to advance learning and discovery, please visit pbshawaii.org and click on the Donate Now button. For Home is Here, I'm Kalihi Miller. Ahui ho.